Risk of bias assessment for randomized control trial. When you are doing a systematic review, we end up with a cluster of randomized control trial studies or just non-randomized control trial or cross-sectional studies, etc. So the tool can be different according to the study design. And today I'm just going to explain how we can use the Cochrane recommended tool, which is RoB2, to assess the risk of bias of randomized control trials. So I'm just going to use one slide to just help myself to organize where I am, and just to explain some of the stuff about the tool. Okay, so this is it. This tool is RoB2, and then this is going to assess the risk of bias of randomized control trials. You can use this for different purposes. One thing is to appraise the critical appraisal of studies that you see, and also to fine tune your own study. When you write up, you can just cautiously think whether you have followed these steps. Okay, this tool have 5 domains. And the first thing is to look at the randomization process, whether it has done appropriately and whether there is any bias arise because of the process, or it can happen, cautiously, or it can happen like by by mistake. And then let's go. Yes, so the one way of introducing bias is during the randomization process, and then deviation from intended interventions. When you're conducting a study, you write up a protocol and you're going to give this intervention. So what is the exact dosage, what is the therapist position if it is an exercise program, what is the patient's position if you are doing a particular exercise or something. But just in case if something has happened, like you just give different dosage to the first set of people, and then by the time you decide to give another dosage at the end, then there is a deviation and that can introduce bias. So to assess that, we need some criteria to check. And then the third domain is to assess the missing outcome data. When it is a RCT, not all the participants at the beginning will end up in your trial during the analysis stage. So there is missing outcomes. What are we going to do? Are we going to take all the data off from the analysis sheet, or is there a particular method to handle these data? If that thing has not handled really well, then the bias can be introduced inside. Because just imagine now there are 3 people dropped out, and those out of 10, and these 3 really favors the control group. So I just easily discarded this data, telling that these are missed outcomes, and then that can introduce bias. So I'm kind of favoring the experimental group. So that can introduce bias too. And the fourth domain is bias in measurement of the outcome. Well, there are different ways of measuring the outcome. So if I'm the outcome measurement of the data collector today, and then tomorrow another person comes and measures the outcome, measures, the bias can introduce. And also if I'm the data collector, and if I know this guy is coming from the experimental group and this guy is coming from the control group, and if there's any personal favoration for any of the groups, I can mimic, I can influence the data output. So there is a pace to introduce bias in measuring the outcome. And the last one is bias in selection of the reported result. Well, when you plan a protocol, just imagine now you have 3 sets of outcomes that you're going to measure, and then you found only one is significant and you publish it, but then 2 of them are not significant and you just decide not to publish it. And there is a bias that you introduce to the process. So we assess each of them as checklist, and your responses can be one of them, like yes, partially no, not, or not indicated. So depending on all the checklist under these domains, you can come into an overall judgment whether this particular research has low risk of bias, which is a high quality research. Then you can, without hesitation, you can put this or we can generalize this result to your population. But if it has some concerns, maybe we can, like, with some cautions, you can still apply this to your participants. But if it is a high risk of bias, which means low quality study, then you have to think maybe 100 times, because it's a patient life when you apply these data to your patient. Okay. And there are 2 ways that we assess bias. One is assessing the bias while you assign the people into different interventions, and the other one is whether the participant adhered to the intervention. So normally, or most of the cases, what we assess is this one, but there are some instances according to your objective, this can be that or both of them. So the one that I'm going to show today is this one. So I'm just going to, I didn't go to the slide view because slideshow view, because I just wanted to show you these files. So I'm just going to take this one out now. Let's see how we can go in a real paper, or how we can assess this particular paper with RoB, RoB2. Okay, so this is the distiller platform, just like Covidence. It's a systematic review manager software. So you can see the tool. These are kind of preliminary question or screening questions, and these are the 5 domains. So you can even just draft it in Excel, but this is good to real-time assess. I'd rather prefer Covidence, but I really wanted to show you how distiller works as well. That's why I'm using it. So let's see how I ended up with these answers. Okay. So the first one is to decide what the study design is. Here, of course, it's a cluster randomized trial parallel group, because it says here. But sometimes you have to decide, like for example, if it is individually randomized control trial, everything is controlled. That means all the groups, it may be 2, it may be 3, it may be 4, but those things are controlled. That means only the intervention is different from group to group. Okay, and then there's individually, we are putting randomly. That is what random call, like we have no influence on the participants group. It just using a maybe using a computerized computerized generated number, computer generated number, okay, whatever. And then coin toss, or maybe a dice rolling, we can decide this one, how to do it randomly. If it is so, we can pick this one, or the cluster wise. Like for example, here they have used 6 intellectually disabled adults and education centers. They didn't randomized person by person, but they have randomized each centers to the groups. So all the people inside one center will eligible to one of the groups accordingly. And then the other one is individually randomized crossover, which is like the same group randomized into different groups. So like both one participant get both the interventions. But this is cluster, so I just picked this one. And then you have to rename what is the experimental group, what is the comparator group, and this has 3 groups, I think. So you have to put one is group training, and one is here we see allocated to control group. One is training through booklet, and what is the other one? Intervention 1, intervention 2 is just group training. Okay, so those 2 you can type, and then comparator is of course no intervention. I think it was there somewhere in the procedure. Here you see no intervention. Okay, so you typed it out here, and then this is something you should really know. Specify which outcomes is being assessed for risk of bias. So risk of bias, if you can remember this slide, I told you that there can be there is a space to introduce bias when it comes to measurement of the outcome. Just imagine now I am measuring pain, and also I am measuring muscle strength in the same study, but I have done measuring pain exactly the way that it needs. It's perfect, so there's no bias. But when it comes to strength, muscle strength, I might have done something differently, and then it can introduce bias. So if there are different outcomes, we have to assess. Sadly, we have to do the same thing for individually for particular outcome. For example, for example, here they have awareness. There were 3 things that these guys were measuring: awareness, attitudes, and self-efficacy. So if it is 3 measurement tools that they have used, then we have to individually assess these 3 different outcomes. Now I'm picking awareness to show you how it goes, and let's see the other part. Okay, and then they ask how they report these outcomes, or the when it is an intervention, we have to measure the effect, how they assess whether it's a risk ratio or odds ratio or mean difference. So usually I can just scroll through to the window, to the table. So there are 6 tables, but the first one is table like group characteristics, which I'm not going to look at, but these are the results. You can see mean and SD is reported in the table 6. They have different measurement outcome, but it's mean difference and 95 confidence interval. So I just typed it down. Okay, and Okay, that is fine. And then, like, is the review teams aim for the results, and for this result, I'm just going to see the effect of assignment to intervention, not the adhering to intervention part. So I'm just ticking it off. And then I'm reading a journal article, of course, so that's a journal article, but I'm reading a protocol for risk of bias assessment, then I might pick this one. Let's go to the real assessment. So I'm just going to come to the first domain, which is assessing the randomization process. Okay, let's see how I ended up with these answers and then the final, like, overall judgment. Was the allocation sequence random? Okay, these guys say that this is like cluster randomized control trial, and also these guys say here this is randomized trial again. But do you know how they have randomized, whether it's a computerized generated number, or how to say, or whether they have used reference to a random number table, or whether it's a coin tossing or shuffling cards, or maybe they have used an envelope. We don't know. Throwing a dice, drawing lots, we really don't know. If we know, well, we can say yes, because these guys have just said yes but not explained. I picked partial yes. Just if someone has used patient record numbers, or like sometimes it's just like expert opinion, I really want this guy in experimental group, then I would say no, because it's clear that it's not random, it's purely based on someone else's decision. Then it's going to be a no. Okay, let's come to 1.2. Was the allocation sequence concealed until participants were enrolled and assigned to interventions? Okay, so allocation concealment. Let me bring up an example. Just imagine that we took the envelope method. When we take the envelope method, we put one, or like we code the participants, like experimental participants are number 1 and 0 is non-experiment or the control group, and we put these numbers in similar cards or something and then put inside the envelope, and then we just give it to the participant, so that participant doesn't know whether he belongs to experimental or to the control group until he opens up the envelope. And I ask the person who's giving the envelope, I also don't know which group they are going to do. So there's minimum chance of introducing bias, but that process is not explained here. So that I said not indicated. If it has indicated, I'd say yes. But just imagine someone said they have just simply said we have not concealed the location in the text, then I can say no. And also I'm going to then I'm going to go to the 1.3 domain. So task, did baseline differences between intervention groups suggest a problem with the randomization process? So the whole purpose of randomization process is to give equal chance to each members of the participants. That means in baselines it should be at least like almost similar. So usually we can go to baseline table and see, otherwise they sometimes put into text and say the baseline differences. Sometimes they do normality test and see whether these are normally normally distributed or not. Sorry, these groups are similar or not normality test, sorry, group similarity test at the beginning they do. Sometimes they report the results, but if they haven't, we can go to table and just use your common judgment. For example, in the group training, the numbers are similar, but imagine if here in the group training they have more older population compared to this one, and this has a younger population, and the booklet training has the younger population, but young people are more into tablets or phone applications or mobile apps, but older population tend to just go and read a booklet, they are fine with it. So there will be influence if these age groups are different between groups. So that can introduce bias. That's what I'm basically looking at. It can be like age, gender, or like educational level differences. So we carefully look at these group similarities between the groups. If there's no such thing, or at least they are almost similar, then we can say there's no problem. So here, what is that? There's no problem as I see. So I said nurse. Now we have to figure out whether this is like this has some concerns or not, or yes. So I took this beautiful table from somewhere in the RoB guide. So I'm just gonna minimize it. Okay, here we go. So now I can compare. You can see there's the past allocation. See, I have a feeling that this is going to end up in some concerns. Let's see. It's partial yes. Okay, so it could be like anything from here or these two, and then this one not indicated. Okay, it's clearly one of these two things then, and then did the baseline, I said no, so it should be here, and it end up with some concerns. So that is how I just picked up, and then I said some concerns. So if it is low risk, I would just say not applicable, because I don't know, I don't know. If it is low risk, it's a good quality study, there's no favor to any of the sites, then should be in literally. But if it is high risk or some concerns, if you can judge whether it favors experimental group or comparator group, of course you can just pick whatever, but because it's optional, I just tend to go for unpredictable rather than thinking of everything. And then I'm going to go to domain 2, but if you can remember, there are in domain 2 there are two tables, one for effect of assignment to intervention and the other one is for adherence, but I'm going to fill only the assignment to intervention one because I'm particularly looking at that one, so that I can leave the other table empty. But if it is something that you need, you can go through. It's just simple questions just like this. Okay, let's go over to one. This is literally asking about blinding. What were participants aware of their assigned intervention during their intervention? So I'm going to go back to the methods, and you can read here whether these guys are blinded or not. If the participants are blinded to the intervention, that means if they don't know whether what is the experimental or what is the control, there's no psychological influence to favor any of the groups. So there's less chance of introducing bias, because it doesn't have anything here, any information here. I said not indicated, but if this thing says the blinding process, I would definitely say yes. But if they have clearly said, okay, these participants are not blinded because of this reason, I would say no, or partially no, whatever matches. And then it's asking about intervention provider. So I'm the for example, if it is exercise intervention, that I'm going to compare exercise to something else, I'm the person who's giving the exercise. If I know who's in the experimental group and who's in the control group, I can just influence them a little bit, right? So that there is a space to introduce bias. If that process is not explained really well, I would say not indicated. If it is not at all, then I'd say not indicated. But if the process is like clearly not stated, I would say partially no. Also, the authors themselves say, okay, this has not done. The intervention providers are fully aware who's in whose group, which group. Then you can say no. And also, if they have clearly tell, okay, these are blinded, then you can say yes. And then if these are the answers, which is in my case yes, were there deviation from the intended intervention that arose because of the experimental context? Yes. What did I say? Yeah, so this is where I need to know about the protocol, and this is why these guys are giving the protocol trial numbers. When you're doing a trial, you need to have to register your trial in a clinical trial. And if it is so, we can go and see whether they have done the same study or they have published the same study at the end. Transparency matters. So I just go to their this one. No, I don't want to go there. I'm just gonna open up as another tab, and then go here, and then using their trial number, I'm just going to search about them. So study is here, you can see they have published it, and I'm going to see whether these guys have published the same outcomes they promised at the beginning. So their primary outcomes are here. You can see knowledge, attitude, self-efficacy. They have given the time point as well, before the intervention, immediately, and 1 month after. Similarly. So this is right, and that is what these guys have done here. They have explained it somewhere here, I think, awareness, blah blah blah, so that we know that they have there were no deviation from the outcomes or the intervention, particularly their intervention. Whereas the intervention, we were talking about intervention, right? Okay, here, intervention group, these are the things that they promise us to give, and those are the things that they have compared in the paper as well. So this is So there's no whatever the deviations were not there, so I said no. And then the 2/4, it asks if yes or partial yes. No, it is not applicable because we said no here. And again it says no, not indicated. No, we have said not applicable, so it's going to be end up with not as not applicable. And this one was an appropriate analysis used to estimate the effect of assignment. Okay, now here we have to think about few things. One thing is whether they have hang on, let me open up the flow chart. One thing is whether they have done intention to treat analysis. That means like first thing, let's see. Now these guys have 27, 27, 27 here. They have analyzed the same number. So that is fine. Okay, they have analyzed. And then the second thing is they have 3 groups and 3 outcomes, which is attitude, awareness, something and something, so that they might have used ANOVA test. Okay, they have used ANOVA, so both are fine. They don't have any missing data. They have done the proper test, so I said yes. But imagine now they have 27, but here 12, and here 27, here 5, here 27, here 27. So the things are different, and some has dropped out and some has severely dropped out. And how I can handle this missing data? So there's a test called an intention to treat analysis. Just imagine now I have one intervention and I'm measuring them after a week. Immediately after the intervention, and I'm measuring them after 6 months. But if I have 3 deaths reported, what should I do? Or should I erase them, or will I delete all the data from the system, or just imagine I can, or I like hang on, let me explain again. You have the intervention. I'm measuring the effect of intervention immediately after the intervention, and then after 1 month. Okay, now after following their first data point, or the immediately after assessment, 3 patients died. What should I do? Because I don't have any data for the 1 month follow-up, should I just delete them or remove them from the data set, or should I keep them? The best way is to keep them. Best way, not the recommended way, maybe not very correct in the wording, but one way to handle these missing data is intention to treat analysis. That is, take those immediately post data to the next data point and then analyze as usual, so that you don't have any missing data there. You are just forwarding the immediately after intervention data to 1 month follow-up data set. So that is what we call the intention to treat analysis. So if they have dropped outs, and if they have discussed intention to treat analysis in the statistical analysis, and then I would say yes. But if they have dropped outs and they have not discussed any intention to treat analysis or any way of handling the missing data, then I would say no, or partially yes actually, because they have done the test really, but they have not done the exact test, and also if they have not talked about intention to treat analysis, then I would say no. So that is how we can handle that one. And then because this is yes, this is going to be not applicable, and now I have to come up with the risk of bias judgment. So I'm just going to drag up again my my simple table. Let's see. So this is not indicated. That means any of them. Oh, actually, before to go, there are 2 boxes, right? So one set from 2.1 to 2.5, and the other one is 2.6 to 2.7. So you have to separately decide what the judgment of risk of bias is, and then based on these 2 answers, you can come up to one conclusion. So let's see what happened. 1.1 to 2.5. Here you can see it's not indicated. Okay. Both, either one, this one, any of not indicated, of course. Okay, and then the third one is no. Okay, third one is no, which is this one. 2.4 is not applicable, not applicable, not applicable. So it is low, right? So this box is low, and I'm going to go to 2.5 and 2.6 and 2.7. Yes and no, not applicable, yes and not applicable, it's low. So both boxes are low, so I can end up in low. But if one of the boxes become high, then I have to say high. One of the boxes become some concerns, I can end up with some concerns. Okay, so that is it. And then of course, because there's low bias, this is going to be not applicable. And the next one is adhering to intervention. I'm going to skip it because my main intention is to see the assignment of intervention and related bias. So the third domain is missing outcome data and the introducing of bias related to that. Let's see how it goes. Okay. Okay, were the data for this outcome available for all or nearly all participants randomized? Okay. මේගොල්ලන්ගේ ඔක්කොගම like sorry. These guys were randomized like into 27 per each, and all of the people were assessed for in their analysis, which means all the outcomes were assessed. Look at here. So all the assessments are done for all the outcomes. They haven't given the numbers, but I assume because all the people are included. But carefully look, sometimes in some of the outcomes, there may be less number than the randomized number. So I assume that is a yes, and I put yes, but because it is yes, these two are not applicable. And also the last one. So this is one easy one to measure, I see. So I'm just going to go to the rush into the and go on. I'm going to open up the table. So it says yes and all three no yes. So it's going to go for low risk category. And of course, if it is a low category, it's going to end up with not applicable. And then let's go into the risk of bias in measurement of the outcome. Okay. So was the method of measuring or the outcome inappropriate? Just imagine I had to assess pain. So I would just easily use pain or McGill questionnaire, whatever pain related one. But if you are choosing something else like a perception scale, no, let's say take this one. This is easy to go wrong. Let's say I'm assessing clinical experience of a nursing student, but I'm picking up a tool where it assesses clinical performance, not clinical assessment, clinical experience. So the tool should be matched to the outcome that we are measuring. And also recently I was assessing a paper. So these guys have used as the outcome as the adherence to clinical guidelines. So it assesses clinical, like, it assesses the professional practice, right? But they have misunderstood that in a way that they are assessing professionals' performance. Professional performance can be different thing. They cannot, it's unfair to use such a tool that doesn't assess the professionals' performance. Do you think that clinical adherence to clinical guideline would assess health professionals' performance straight away? I don't think so. I don't think it's a direct measure to assess that one. So it can be, so we have to carefully see and come into a judgment whether it's appropriate or not. But in this case, they're assessing attitude and something with the Likert scale, I think, which is no issue. So I said no. It is not inappropriate. Okay. Could measurement or ascertainment of the outcomes have differed between intervention groups? There are few ways that it can go differ. Okay. One way, now I have one outcome. Let's think it's pain. But I have used different methods, like visual analog scales for one group, and the other group I'm using numerous rating scale. What is that? NRS scale, I don't know, NRS scale. So there are two scales different the same outcome. It's unfair. And also cutoff. For example, I wanted to see the baseline eligibility or something, and then no, not eligibility. I'm using mental stability, and I have one cutoff for control group, one cutoff for experimental group, which is unfair and can introduce bias. Not only that, also comparable time points. I think I have stated somewhere at the beginning. If I take the intervention, I just assess the effect of the intervention immediately after from the experimental group. But when I come to control group, I'm just assessing after 2 days, which is introducing a lot of errors, right, or bias. And then if it has clearly explained somewhere, I can say yes, but they have not explained it really well. So I would go for partial yes. When it's partial yes, these all three become not applicable. And then I'm going to take my little chart here. You can say it's no, it's no, that means one of them. And then it goes to partial yes, which is partial yes, maybe this one. And then all the others are not not applicable, but soon after it becomes partial years, it becomes high risk. So this becomes high risk and it's unpredictable. I don't know what side it favors now, but if you really have time or do whatever, you can just figure it out. Okay. um, it is optional, so that I didn't pay much attention. And the last one is risk of bias in selection of the reported result, where the selection reporting can happen. Okay, the first one is 5.1 was the trial analyzed in accordance to with pre-specified plan was finalized before an unblinded outcome data were available for analysis. So I just went there to their pre-protocol. This can be like a trial protocol, or maybe that can be a published protocol. You can go there and tally the outcomes that they promised to measure. So they promised to measure 3 things, I think, and they have published everything there in their paper. So that's a yes. And then, is the numerical result being assessed likely to have been selected on the basis of results from multiple outcome measurements? What I understood from here is like the same outcome, but they measured using different scales, and but they report only one. Okay, whatever the significant one, for example, but that has not happened here in this paper, so that I said no. There were no multiple analysis of data, it's just the same analysis they have done, so I said no to. And now I have to check the overall risk of biasment, so I take my little graph, this one. So if the 5.1 says yes, no, and no, it's going to be end up in low, which means it's going to be not applicable, the favoration. And now I have to decide overall risk of bias thinking of all 5 domains. If everything is low, then obviously it is low low risk of bias, which is high quality one. If there's no high risk, but there is at least one some concern, then that is going to end up in some concern. Whatever the response is, at least if there is one high in one of the domains, that can be end up in high risk. So because of the randomized something, and I think at the beginning there was partial yes of the allocation sequence. No, not that one. There was something end up with high. Let me check. This one. For the measurement of the outcome, they ended up being high, so the overall risk of this paper is going to be high. So that you can sit down and just try to find out whether it favors experimental or favors comparator, but I just go with unpredictable. So that is how you can use RoB2 for randomized control trials risk of bias assessment.